The Hog's Die is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsdie.com.
It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and John Worrell. And now, here's your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogsty Network, the show where we look at the dollars and the cents of the sports, media, industrial, entertainment, advertising, and yes, sometimes prison complex. I am joined by my regular co-host and comrade at arms, Steve. How you doing this morning?
And sometimes prison. Yeah. That's true.
That's true. We talk crime blotter enough on here.
Yeah, that's true. I know. And some of these guys, man, just aren't, hate to burst anybody's bubble out there, but some of them just aren't good people. It's a shame. But no, I'm doing fine. I'm, hanging out here down in Houston. We just got through, the big tropical storm on Melda, which really sucked. It was a lot of water. I escaped, fortunately, but people were rescued via boat again. It's harkened back to Hurricane Harvey a little bit, minus the wind. So that stunk.
Was Harvey last year or 2 years ago?
No, it was 2 years ago, 2017.
Right.
I think I have a photo that's still on the website, as a matter of fact. I made a plea for money back then, not for me, but for charities. And I think I took a picture that was down the street from me, of a flooded street. But yeah, anyway, so, but we're all kind of back to normal here, at least the folks who didn't suffer damages, of course. So all is well in my world.
All right, and we want a quick house cleaning announcement. We're normally and traditionally and historically have been a three-man gang. We will be returning to a three-man gang, but it may not be for a while, or it will be with guest hosts. Our third regular host, John, is taking a bit of a leave of absence. He has a permanent chair on the show, and will be when ready, he will be back. So just to give you a heads up, the probably default will be Steve and I, and then maybe Alex, or we'll work on some others to weave in. But it will be Steve and I as your regulars for the near future.
Yeah, he'll be back at some point. So, he's not gone. He's just absent.
So, for you John heads out there, don't worry. He will be back. You'll just have to put.
There probably are a few John heads out there,
Right. Yeah. Speak up. All right. So let's jump into our stories this week. Unsurprisingly, we're going to start with Antonio Brown, which is funny because we've been covering the story since basically since the Frozen Feet. The Frozen Feet were where we began our journey with Antonio Brown and his regular appearances on the show. But our last show, we were literally discussing it as three major developments in the story happened. So, which I don't know if I can even remember. It was when he got cut by the Raiders, right? Was when we were recording last time.
Yeah, okay, but you missed. John and I had a discussion about him. So the first thing that happened was the feet. And we were covering kind of what a mess he was, and that he was causing the Raiders problems. And then 2 weeks later, when you were here and John was out, then we covered the helmet gate,
right?
And just kind of he was a general pest. And then literally, I think an hour after we recorded that show, he got cut by the Raiders. And we debated going back and forth, re-recording the segment, and went, there's going to be more to it. Yeah. Let's just let it roll. It's not going to end. And surely here we are, 2 weeks later. He was signed by the Patriots for guaranteed money, incidentally. $9 million guaranteed or something. I couldn't stomach looking up the contract details. He lasted all of 11 days, and during those 11 days, somebody accused him of rape and sexual assault. Multiple counts first, and then another hypothetical accuser, not hypothetical, another accuser came forward. So now there's two of them. And then that woman said that he was harassing her, via like text message and stuff. And then finally, the Patriots said they'd had enough and just got rid of him. So that's the history of Antonio Brown. So he's technically a free agent, I guess, right now. The NFL is investigating this stuff and apparently did meet with one of these women this past week. Meaning last week when you're listening to this. And so he could, even though he's a free agent, they could still suspend him, and then the suspension wouldn't start until he gets signed by another team, if he does. I can't imagine who would possibly sign him at this point. Yeah, so he can't sit out his suspension while he's currently on the bench. That's the thing. I know you looked at me crosswise. That's not how the NFL rolls.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I that's just interesting. And not that I just think. So let me get if I hear this straight. If he's unsigned, they can't suspend him. It's like there's nowhere to stick the suspension, basically.
Well, it's not that they can't; it's that they won't, because they want him to actually suffer. They could keep him from getting signed, right? I mean, the NFL could just not approve a contract.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's how they could do it. So, but historically, these suspensions, because this has happened before, he's not the first one in this situation. Historically, the suspension starts when he's re-signed because they want him to feel some kind of pain. Because it's kind of like being out on parole. If you're suspended while you're not signed anyway. Or like it's kind of like time served is what it is.
They don't want to,
like you're in jail waiting trial, and then once you get convicted, the court's gonna count the days that you've already served against your sentence. That's not how the NFL rolls.
Gotcha.
This kind of stuff.
Gotcha. So they don't want him to basically just sit out of the league. A year from now, someone feels like it's died down enough, tries to sign him, and then he's got his time served already done.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So at that point, when the Raiders, or not the Raiders, like the Chiefs or the Redskins or some other morally deficient team decides they want him on the team, then the suspension starts. If a suspension starts, I mean, look, I read the petition, and just to be the petition that's on file, which is a civil suit, not a criminal suit, against Brown by this woman. I think her name was, oh God, I can't remember. Jacobs, maybe, can't remember. Anyway, so it goes into pretty graphic detail. It's the petition has got a screenshot of text messages from Brown, allegedly. They're almost like indecipherable gibberish, on his part, but it looks really ugly. It should be said, of course, that there are allegations, not proven facts. A petition is not a fact. It doesn't have any facts. A petition has allegations that are unproven. So it's very important to remember that. But nonetheless, it does look bleak for him in some respects. Now, what's interesting is that this first woman never filed a criminal charges against him. That's pretty common in rape cases, though. I mean, neither of us are psychologists, obviously, so we wouldn't, we'd probably need a psychologist to get into the effects of rape on women, and all of that. But I can say it's not nearly as uncommon as you think. And many, many professionals would say you can't necessarily blame these women for not immediately reporting rapes, just for psychological reasons, which again we're not expert in. So, but there will be a civil lawsuit against him, and the NFL is investigating. As I've said in other cases, the NFL does not hold itself to criminal standards or even civil trial standards. The NFL's standard of proof, basically, in this is essentially if we think you did it. That's really the standard of proof. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not even more likely than not, which is a civil standard. It's basically, we kind of think you did it. That's the standard. It doesn't take much. So he might be in trouble.
Yeah.
He really might be.
That was going to be my point where, all the stuff about, allegedly and that whole world of, which, is the right way to handle things. It's both the law and it's ethically right. However, the NFL doesn't give, two shakes of a stick about that. This is about protecting the shield. Even if they just think, even if they can spend anything, but their bottom line is, do we want to deal with this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly right. Do we want to deal with it? It's not about your rights. It's only about what kind of image is this setting for the Shield, as you said. And they've become hypersensitive to this since the Ray Rice incident. I mean, look, if Ray Rice hadn't been caught on an elevator camera, I dare say the NFL's entire standards for personal conduct might never have changed. It might have been completely different than it is now. NFL players decry the NFL's authority in these discipline cases, and I really don't understand why. I truly don't. This just seems like the wrong hill to die on. If you're the NFLPA, do you really want to go down with this ship, defending these guys like this? I mean, Roger Goodell has become the boogeyman and all of that, and it seems like everybody hates him, and I understand that. And frankly, that's part of his job, to be hated in some respects. But, how many on a percentage basis of NFL players are getting in trouble and suspended? Like very small, right? Like what, 1% or something, whatever the number is.
And I think I feel like that player complaint about that has died down over the last couple of years. I think, one, because some of the seriousness of these allegations. One, because I think there's a general idea that, you don't want these bad apples to define the whole, to your point, especially when percentage-wise it's fairly low. I think where they picked their battle with them overstepping their bounds is more around in-game fines and things like that. I haven't heard as much outcry as you did 2, 3, 4 years ago from the players and players union about the disciplinary measures at this level. Quick question, Steve. So I think one thing that really sunk Antonio Brown here is the text messages and your ability to publish them and for them to spread virally on all forms media.
Yeah.
Are text messages now in that same level as videotape of sort of damning evidence, especially in a court of public opinion?
I don't think so. I mean, video, you can see a face, right? You knew that was Ray Rice, unless somebody was really, really super clever with Photoshop, which I suppose is possible, like the L.L.C's of the world could pull it off, but you can really see a face, whereas a text message can be faked. Text message, you're looking at the text message, like, I don't know if you saw the petition, but there was a screenshot in the text of the petition, and it said, I think Antonio Brown or something at the top of it, but you could have mocked that up, right?
Yeah, but you can't.
So you can't see.
You can't fake it. Yes, I agree, but you can't fake it at the level. You can. You can find and get evidence to back that up. Like you can check the phone records and say that you can prove it was
of
sent
course.
Eventually.
Oh, absolutely. But just like from the public, just looking at it face value, I don't think it really has that same impact because all you're seeing are words on a screen. Ultimately, words on a piece of paper from a screen, and that's it. And it just doesn't have the visceral effect of seeing Ray Rice with his closed fist punching a woman. For example, or Kareem Hunt kicking somebody. The text messages are bad, but I just don't think the public cares as much. And listen, I mean, by the way, have you noticed? Patriots fans were defending this guy. I mean, Patriot fans are just the most absurd people imaginable. Absurd, entitled, neurotic people you will ever find. I mean, people were making this into a racial incident. Bringing up, Peyton Manning's incident from 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago now at Tennessee. Are you familiar with that incident? Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know, a trainer, I think it was a trainer at the University of Tennessee while he was a student athlete there, alleged that he exposed himself to her like in a training room. And that was covered at the time, but it didn't have, back then there was no social media, there was no all this viral, reaction, all that. It was covered, and it was the end of it. And so people are comparing this Antonio Brown incident to Peyton Manning. I just think it's apples to oranges. I don't know. I just can't imagine a team would want to sign him at this point. Is there really any team that's going to be willing to sign Antonio Brown?
Not right now. And I have a kind of a transition question for you. I'll throw at the end. But I wanted to follow up. I agree with you. I think video is still king in terms of changing hearts and minds. But there's something I think about the text messages that feel different to me than maybe they would have a couple years ago. And that is so much where everybody really is so used to communicating via text. And then thus that means communications can sometimes be contentious. And so I think people viscerally start to understand what it's like to get attacked or fight through text messages. So I think, to see that kind of aggression through a text message just because of the way we communicate is starting to have garner more visceral reaction. And I've been interested to see how, the text messages punched through the commentary, which, to your point, like Patriots fans, anyone can justify anyone. That's just anything. That's a society we currently live in. And there's something I think about the text messages that punch through that a little bit in this particular case.
Well, yeah, and the wording of the text messages kind of rang true a little bit. I mean, that's not proof, and that's obviously my opinion, but it's Antonio Brown doesn't exactly speak the King's English. I mean, his text messages were gibberish to me, but I suppose it makes sense to him. But they just kind of rang true to me for some reason. So I mean, it registered for me, but I just. Obviously, just not the same as a video. And a video in this case would be horrible because they're talking about rape and sexual assault. And, I don't know how we can say this and keep it PG, but one of the allegations was that he pleasured himself on her back while she was sitting and doing other things, which is just absolutely just disgusting. And that was what the text messages were about, which again I could barely read them. So I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine any team would sign him right now, even like the Redskins. The Redskins signed Reuben Foster. But these allegations are far more serious than Reuben Foster's allegation.
I would agree with that. So. Another piece of this that I find interesting was that, the life, like we've said at the beginning, this story has gone through 10 lifetimes in 5 weeks. But I remember the big thing, which I actually agreed with at the time, was when there was a lot of histrionics around, he's one of the worst people to ever be in the NFL. Now, this was during Helmet Gate and during, Frozen Feet. And this guy's a clown, this and anything. And some people were like, hey, but, he hasn't beaten up a woman. He hasn't raped. He hasn't murdered. There have been worse people in the NFL. But this, like 5 days later, like, nope, that's gone. Like, this is just, the speed of this thing is incredible.
Yeah, we went from an irritating pest to an accused rapist. Literally like overnight.
It is.
I mean, look, this is the timing of the petition was interesting. I mean, they weren't up against a statute of limitations clock. They filed this petition for maximum impact. There's no doubt about that. And maybe we got to point out again, maybe it's all hogwash. Maybe this is some gold digger who's trying to get money out of him. You never know. I mean, we don't know. And the timing, I don't know if I would say the timing is suspicious, but the timing is certainly
strategic.
It was intentional, for sure. But I don't think even the Redskins are going to bring him in. I mean, that's just crazy.
No, I would seriously doubt that. So here's my final question on this, at least for this show. What percentage chance of him taking another snap in the NFL ever?
It's funny you say that because I put that on the Hog Size Twitter feed the other day just to see what kind of reaction we'd get. I think less than half. I'm going to say 30%.
Yeah, that's probably right where I was. I was going to say 25, kind of give it a 1 in 4 type of ratio, which I think we may be our generosity and cynicism might even be pushing that number up.
Yeah, maybe. And because people forget that when this all started, when he forced his way out of Pittsburgh in the middle of a playoff run. I mean, he's not been a good citizen for a long time. And the Steelers kind of maybe, the rich guy down the street who has more problems than you think because they lost Le'Veon Bell. They lost Antonio Brown. There's been stuff going on in Pittsburgh, but, he's been a knucklehead for a long time. And the Steelers just somehow dealt with him. So even putting aside the rape allegations, I personally wouldn't want him in my building. If I were an NFL team, rape aside, you are not worth it. Yes, you've burned a lot of corners. You made Josh Norman and Bashaud Breeland look silly a couple years ago. But you're just too much hassle. And, so you got to put the too much hassle part together with the rape part, and that makes his chances of playing again pretty low, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, so start to focus ourselves on things that are people that are actually playing or maybe not playing for different reasons. NFL ratings appear to be ticking up. Recent reports said that so far through 2 weeks, of course, by the time you hear this, we'll have been through 3 weeks of the NFL season, but tracking through the first 2 weeks, that they're up 5% across all platforms and across all time slots. So that's a bit of a aggregate number. It might be a little bit, up more on Sunday at 4:15 or whatever, but in aggregate, they're up 5% across all ways they count. Which is remarkable on a number of levels. And then this article went on to say that they don't expect the recent rash of quarterback injuries, retirements, basically a lot of the middle-aged to above NFL quarterbacks who have kind of ruled the roost the last decade or so are for whatever reason not playing this Sunday. And they expect the NFL to be ratings Teflon against that loss of star power. It's just remarkable.
Yeah, I think this just shows more than anything that the NFL is about the brands and not the players. Like I don't think like in the NBA ratings would be significantly down if I don't know, if like Kobe Bryant was out when he was still playing for the Lakers, ratings were down for the Lakers, right? And if LeBron James and pick your player, Kevin Durant, those guys drive ratings, drive attendance, drive sales all by themselves and have a much higher Q rating than like Drew Brees. With the NFL, it's about the product and it's about the teams, and this just goes to show that. It really does. Because who have we lost? We've lost Breeze, we've lost Roethlisberger,
Cam Newton.
Cam Newton, and by the way, when Cam Newton played 2 Thursdays ago, he looked like a shell of himself. He looked like he was washed up to me. I don't know what's going on with his shoulder. He couldn't drive the ball at all. He had no velocity whatsoever on the ball. He just looked awful. And Paul Feinbaum pointed that out. Did you see this clip? Paul Feinbaum pointed that out. And Ryan Clark jumped all over him and made it into a racial incident because he didn't really have that same negative thought about Eli Manning. Well, Eli Manning doesn't look washed up to me. He just looks like he's getting older and, he slipped a little bit. But Cam Newton looked like he didn't belong on a football field. But regardless, be that as it may, I think it goes to show that it's the shield that's important and not the players. Sorry, players, but that's just the way it is. And the other thing I'd like to point out, I don't know how much we want to get into this because I almost killed each other a couple years ago about this, but the NFL has also put a kibosh on the political stuff. Obviously, and I remain convinced that they are in cahoots with the major media networks, NFL Network, ESPN, to just kind of stop talking about the kneeling and all that stuff because that was really a serious problem for people, and that's been gone for a while, and so people have gotten away from the politics back to the football, and I think that has also helped bring some people back.
Here's where I agree with you on that piece. I think it's one of those things where, regardless of vantage point, take, opinion on issue, the general consensus of the casual to intense football fandom would rather not think or talk about that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's my point. Yeah.
So I think I think that's undoubtedly the case. So to what degree that was all backroomed, I think it probably to a large degree is my default answer. That there's been some kind of thing about, not dissimilar to what I said a few minutes ago. Anytime you can just kind of hold your breath and get through something, if your brand, your product is strong enough, then that thing will be in the rear view soon enough. And that's essentially what they manufactured and probably got some luck out of as well. But I think I think just less controversial in general. I agree that it's just their brand is that strong, at least for the time being, and to see a kind of a return to the mean is pretty in this short amount of time, because that wasn't that long ago. And this is the only thing that actually is sustaining its ratings. Everything else that's on broadcast, or actually even cable television, is taking a pummeling, and that's everything. That's other things that are live events like news or news coverage, and then narrative based programming, and anything that's on that medium is ratings are not sustaining, let alone ticking back up.
Yeah, and of course the new network TV season starts this week for the people when you're listening to this. So it'd be interesting to see how ratings go for the new broadcast premieres, as compared to the NFL for sure. But it's what the NFL's done for decades.
Yeah, and what
they've created a product that's just the sum of the whole are far greater than the parts. Because the biggest star in football is probably Tom Brady, I'd say. Wouldn't you think? Tom Brady, probably?
Yeah.
But I think if Tom Brady retired tomorrow, I don't think it would affect the ratings a single bit. Like zero. I think it would have zero negative impact on the ratings. Like, nobody's just watching football just for Tom Brady. Outside of a few knuckleheads in Boston, who would probably go crazy and lose their minds, I think it would have zero impact whatsoever. Whereas if LeBron James left the NBA, that's a big problem. And that proved to be a problem in the playoffs last year. Remember how the playoff ratings for the NBA this past season, were down because LeBron wasn't in the playoffs. It's a star-driven league, the NBA.
And I
just not the NFL.
I do think the NFL is benefiting, because I agree. There's no argument that that it is a brand team driven product. However, the NFL is pretty lucky right now that it's got a generation of young quarterbacks that do replace those names, and maybe if they don't replace them they do replace them as stars, but it's not like people are talking about generically quarterback play is horrible. Right? So if we were no Breeze, no Roethlisberger, a benched Eli, whatever, that whole generation, Phillip Rivers on one leg, that generation is time, Father Time is marching them out the door. But no one's talking about bad quarterback play, right? There's plenty of exciting quarterbacks. No one's saying there's a quarterback deficient league right now. So there is, at the position level, there isn't a deficit.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Because I think probably the reason why some of these little leagues, like the ones that L.L.C just falls all over himself for, the Arena League and all these other things, part of the reason why they don't succeed is that the football just isn't as good. It's just not as quality of football for the most part, generally speaking, for those little leagues, and that's also why people aren't as interested. And so as long as the NFL keeps up its quality, yeah, I think they'll be fine. And there's no reason to think that quarterbacking is going to drop off. If they have a problem because all this concussion stuff, you're really talking, I think, about a generation away, if you ask me. Because if the problem is going to be the kids in like middle school now who are starting like Pee Wee football, if their parents don't put them in that, they let them play baseball instead, and you grow up with a whole generation of like people less interested in football. I think that's the problem. If you talk like 15 years from now, that might be the problem that they have to solve. It's not really the here and now.
We'll have robot players by then, so we'll be fine.
Maybe, yeah. Robot players with, the Redskins helmet on it, and, I don't know, man. That might not be quite as interesting.
I don't know. I tasted that. I had a meatless Whopper, and I couldn't tell the difference.
I refuse to taste the meatless Whopper just out of principle.
That's silly, but it's actually. I think I would be hard pressed to tell the difference.
Really, it was that good, huh?
It's not that I don't know if good is the word I'd use. I'd say that it approximated the fairly mediocre but yet satisfying taste of a Whopper.
Okay.
So if you have a mental construct in your head of what a Whopper should be when you ingest it, the degradation of difference was negligible.
Okay. Fair enough, but I try to avoid all things veganism just as a matter of principle. It's my little form of protest.
I'm fairly, I'm a pretty big carnivore, so I can't deny that. But I just it was a scientific experiment for me. I wanted to see how much I could tell the difference. And I've eaten plenty of Whoppers in my life.
I want to try a comparison of Chick-fil-A to this new Popeyes sandwich one of these days and see which one I like better. Because I have a theory on this too. I think the Popeyes versus Chick-fil-A has become basically it's a woke chicken argument versus conservative chicken argument.
Well, what is
more than anything?
What isn't right now?
Yeah, that's kind of what it's turned into, right? Because people don't like Chick-fil-A largely for political reasons, and Popeyes has become sort of the hip thing, right? And so I think those people who are more predisposed to that are predisposed to Popeyes. I actually think there's a woke political point to be made in this Popeyes versus Chick-fil-A thing, which is sad and pathetic.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. But I'll let the record show that I've always preferred Popeyes to Chick-fil-A.
Of course you have. See, you've proven my point.
No, I was going to say before that.
I've never liked Popeyes, and I've always preferred Chick-fil-A. So there you go.
I was going to say before I would even care or know anything about anything beyond taste. But maybe that's for a different day.
Yep.
Although I'll give Chick-fil-A credit. I love their non-fried chicken nuggets. So there you go, Steve. All right, so we talk often about the NFL's dominance in the US of A. In fact, we just talked about their bounce back, return to the mean things in television ratings. But we got some other global data, and that was just the massive and faster than even they expected budget growth of the Barcelona soccer team. But I would like soccer more if I understood how their leagues work, but whatever. So tell us a little bit about Barcelona's, I guess, operating budget.
Yeah, first of all, everybody who knows me knows I'm not a soccer fan. I think it's a boring, awful sport, and it puts me to sleep. But most of the world disagrees with me on this. So what this is all about is the Barcelona Soccer Club, which for the life of me now, it's escaping what their nickname is, frankly, but it's Barcelona. They have an operating budget. They are the first team in the world to have an operating budget of over $1 billion, or €1 billion, which we just, right before the show, did the conversion, and it's about a 1.1 to 1.1 ratio, so it's almost the same. So if you're thinking dollars, $1 billion would be like 1.1 billion, okay? So that's massive. Think about that. They have an operating budget of $1 billion. Now, NFL teams, they've got player expenses of, $187, million. Their budget isn't anywhere near $1 billion. What was more interesting to me than this, Chris, is that their budget was $1 billion. Their profit, did you see this part of this article?
I did.
Their profit was only like 11 million euros. How on earth do you not make more money? Yeah, that's what really blew my mind. Yeah, here it is. Okay, the slight increase in profit for Barcelona from 5 million euros to 11 million euros after tax, with a operating budget of $1 billion. You're only making 11 million euros. My God.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. I just figured I was reading it or understanding it wrong, because if the what appears to be true is true in my interpretation of reading that sentence, that seems like a bad return.
Yeah, well, listen, the numbers are right here, okay? I mean, it's expenditures, 1.007 billion. Profit before tax, 14, meaning 14 million. Profit after tax, 11. Their EBITDA, 199 million. EBITDA is interest before earnings, interest in debt, and taxes, and that's what EBITDA stands for. And so basically that's sort of gross earnings before you have to pay any money out, and that's EBITDA is a measure that financial guys use for the health of a company. And so their EBITDA is 199. So what they're saying is there's a ton of debt.
Okay,
that's what they're saying. If your operating budget is a little over $1 billion, your net profit, your gross profit is 14, and your EBITDA is 199. That tells me you've got a ton of debt out there somewhere. I don't know how a soccer team can have that much debt. Quite honestly, maybe the team owns their stadium. I don't think so. I think all those stadiums in Europe are owned by, are publicly owned, I think. So it's amazing. But here's the point. So we don't have all the financials, and we're missing something in this clearly. But the point here is, I think to me, the macro point for you guys listening is that soccer truly is the dominant sport in the world. As much as I hate to say it, because I don't like soccer, but they're just trouncing NFL. Popularity and money-wise. That's the point, I think, to make.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like, how could it not, in that one has, if you just think it potential, well, market size is just, it dwarfs it just there. So, soccer is a global sport and thus has a global market, and the European based leagues are the top of the food chain in terms of soccer, professional soccer. Well, I don't even know what it is. That's part of my problem, is I don't understand how any of it works.
Well, okay, so I'm not an expert on it either, but there are multi-tiered soccer leagues, okay? And so, like, the top league is the Premier, in Europe is the Premier League. But if you are, like, the New York Jets or the Redskins or the Premier League, you're going to get bumped down to a lower level league. And I don't know how far you can get bumped down. Only thing I really know is that the Premier League is the top of the food chain. So, like, the Barcelonas and Manchester United of the world play in the Premier League. That's really kind of as far as I go with it. But what this really goes to show, I think, is the NFL is never going to make it in Europe. At least at a minimum, they've got like decades to go. And if they put one team in London, that's not going to change anything. That's like they need to get a foothold. They need to put a whole division in Europe and kind of slowly build it over years and years to even approach the popularity of soccer in Europe. That's what this shows me.
American football is really a uniquely American, or United States of America, phenomenon. And for whatever reason, and we're not here to debate that or even discuss it, but it resonates with, it's one of the Americans more than almost anything else, because lots of things are exportably, culturally, from America to the rest of the world, and America generally drives global taste to a large degree. There is just something, and I think it's okay, this might be my most nativist stance, people. It's okay that something just be uniquely American. It doesn't culturally translate, and it's never going to. Now, are there pockets of interest? Sure, but they're niche. You can find pockets of rabid cricket fans and leagues in the United States too. That doesn't mean it has any cultural relevancy at scale. So this idea, it's okay, American football, it's okay to be only an American thing. And your energy, time, and money spent in making it have the global market potential of soccer is a sucker's bet, will never happen. It is a waste of money, and it's okay. I understand you get tantalized by the big fish marketplace of what soccer has, but some things just are.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's a sucker's bet. It truly is. And I think especially if you put one team in Europe, that's going to cause so many logistical problems for what payoff? What division are you going to put the London Monarchs in? Or whatever. You're going to put them in the AFC or NFC East, and then you're going to fly teams across the Atlantic every single week. You're going to make them fly across the Atlantic every single week. What happens when they have to play the Seattle Seahawks and there's a 9-hour time difference? Just off the top of my head. I think the only way it really works in Europe is if you have an entire division in Europe. And that's such a long way away. But listen, NFL, if you want to have an expansion team, let's go to Salt Lake City. Or, I don't know, San Antonio. Or, somewhere, I don't know, somewhere else, Las Vegas. I guess we have a Las Vegas team now. Portland, Oregon, maybe. Although I personally wouldn't, with all this Antifa stuff, I wouldn't invest a dime in Portland. But that's me. Yeah, I really wouldn't. I think Portland, the political leadership of the city of Portland ought to be ashamed of itself, and they ought to be fired immediately and run out of town by people who actually know what they're doing. Because they've let these like hooligans take over the city. But that's another podcast. Point is, I totally agree with you. One other thing we agree with, Chris, I just can't believe it. It is a absolute sucker's bet, 100% sucker's bet, and what they're drawn to is the money. Obviously, oh my God, it's such a huge market. We can make a fortune. You're not going to make a fortune. Didn't NFL? Am I wrong in thinking that NFL Europe failed?
Yeah, definitely failed.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's soccer is the biggest sport in the world. It always will be. Call me the day an NFL team has $1 billion operating budget. And if somebody out there is listening to this who knows Barcelona, let me know what they're spending $1 billion on, because I really want to know, because I just can't figure. I can't imagine that. I know their player acquisition costs aren't that high. So what are they spending all that money on? I just don't understand. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Although, they have a good amount on their swag budget, I know, because I see their jerseys everywhere in the United States.
Can't possibly be $800 million worth of it, though.
No. I'm grasping for straws, but they do have good branding coverage in the United States. I'll give them that. At least
yeah, and we didn't pull this story out of thin air. This is Bleacher Report. That gave this story. And this is the September 19th, called Barcelona's 2019 budget reveals biggest income in world sports, $1 billion expenditure. So that's the story. And the numbers truly say what they say. I mean, again, profit before tax 14, which is 14 million. So there's something about these numbers that we don't know. And this goes on to say the team spent well over 200 million euros to sign 4 players who I can't pronounce and don't know who they are. So I don't know. So maybe a lot of this is, maybe there's other costs associated with player acquisition other than just salary. Maybe they have to pay, maybe there's payments that have to be made back and forth between teams. I mean, I'm just guessing. Don't know.
I have no idea. So maybe we'll dig on that a little bit. But it is eye-popping numbers, and it makes very clear why the NFL is constantly after this fool's gold, just because of the potential. But I think they're clouded and blinded if they think it's going to work.
Because there's another chart farther down in this thing that's talking about net income of being 143 million for Barcelona. So as opposed to EBITDA on profit. So we're missing something in the numbers completely. But the point is, I think the same. No matter what we're missing, it's a huge, gigantic, eye-popping number. And that's what the NFL wants, and that's what they're not ever going to get, ever.
No. And so good on you, Barcelona. That's pretty amazing. And it is very difficult to find out. They don't really have a mascot per se. Like, they're not necessarily the Barcelona.
Oh, they're the Dragon. And the Barcelona Dragons.
But it's so buried anywhere in there. Like, it's almost like they have to have one, but it's not.
Okay, you're going to make me Google this.
Yeah, I'm on their Wikipedia page.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're people call them Barca. Like, that's kind of like the shorthand for the team. But
okay, let's see. Barcelona Dragons.
Is that what it is?
That might be it. Well, I don't know. That might have been an old EuroLeague football team too. So I'm going to find out, because now it's making me wonder. Okay, yeah, the Barcelona Dragons were a World League team. So forget I just said that. That's nothing to do with anything. So I don't know what their mascot. They certainly don't have, like, a Jaguar or something, like, Jacksonville Jaguars.
No, they're colloquially known as Barca.
Okay.
Whatever, which is obviously short. It's built based off Barcelona.
It's like the most uncreative nickname ever, but you guys do you.
Well, beautiful city. So if everyone ever has you go see a game there, you might as well take him up on it. Okay, so from European football to tequila, is that our transition?
Yeah, I don't know how we can possibly do that smoothly.
Yeah, so we see some big-time sports brands names jumping into the micro distillery and branded content. But this one's a weird kind of. That's not strange. There's all kinds of versions of that littered around. And if you care about these things, there's actually a micro distillery movement happening in the United States. So it's much cheaper and regional for these people to slap their brands on. But from a sports business perspective, a weird marriage behind this one, right? It's the Buss family, of course, Lakers owners and royalty, and Michael Jordan. So, what?
Yeah, okay, it's not just them either. And I when I'm about to read this, I refuse to use the NBA's ridiculous, insane new names for owners, because it's absurd. So it's the Lakers owner, Jeannie Buss, coupled with the Milwaukee Bucks owner, Wes Edens, and then the Celtics co-owner, Wyc Gausbeck, if I pronounce that right. I don't know if it's Wyc or Wyc Gausbeck. So it's Jordan, Jeannie Buss, Bucks owner, Celtics owner, have created a line of tequila. Now, everybody and their son has a line of tequila. Like Sammy Hagar has started a tequila brand.
Yeah, he's the innovator.
Sold it, and I think he has another one.
Yeah.
I think he now has another one. And so I don't know what it is about tequila that makes these people want to do this. But just to be clear, this is an outside of the NBA thing. The NBA is not sponsoring tequila. This is just these four very, very wealthy people decided to start a line of tequila. Now, I know as little about tequila as possible. I've never had a sip of it in my entire life. I don't know anything about tequila whatsoever. But like you said, I see this over and over and over again. There's a million little tequila brands, and now I don't know. Microbreweries beer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so there's a million of those too. Obviously, it's interesting. I think the story to me seems like with this is that the NBA would want its owners to get involved in stuff like this. Is it really good for NBA owners, NBA business, for its owners to be hawking alcohol? I guess that's the question. Or does it not matter? Maybe it's just me being me.
Steve.
Well, I mean, seriously. I mean, that's my question.
Do their
that's what
stadiums sell alcohol currently?
Does what?
Do
Stadiums
sell alcohol currently?
Well, yeah, of course they do.
Well, because then what? So what variances of selling alcohol past that would be any worse, or would be differentiated by the fact that the from a in stadium experience and on TV experience, selling alcohol at scale is one of their main reasons to exist.
Look, this is, if you want me to be honest, this is the thought that went through my head, okay? It seems to me to be a bit different to sell Coors Light or whatever in a stadium and have NBA owners hawking tequila, their own brand of tequila. Maybe nobody but me cares, okay? I'm not even saying I care. I'm just wondering if that's an image issue for the NBA. That's all I'm wondering. Apparently, you don't think it is at all.
I just think that a vehicle to sell alcohol and professional sports are already inseparable. So, like, this idea that and your mileage may vary or how much you care. But I just think, like, at this level downstream, it doesn't make a difference one way or the other.
Although technically, I just point out that the NFL isn't hawking alcohol; it's the stadiums that are hawking alcohol, and no NFL team owns a stadium. A few NFL owners own stadiums, but ultimately the teams have nothing to do with.
So the television networks are going to pay the TV contracts if they can't use it to sell beer. And does the NFL directly profiting from their TV deals?
Absolutely, 100%. But I don't know. It just seems like it's a step. I just wonder whether it's a step too far. Again, maybe this is just me. I don't know. But that's what went through my head. Is this really good for the NBA to be doing this? Maybe nobody cares. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe the NBA thinks it's awesome. Maybe the NBA can care less. But an NFL owner, a bunch of NBA owners branding tequila. I don't know. At a very minimum, it seemed like it was a tad morally questionable. That's all. For the NBA Shield, maybe.
I just think that would be incredibly hypocritical if that would be the take. I don't know. I think it's interesting more that these are now micro distilleries. It's an interesting business model around this. It's much more regional based. So there's a lot of me in terms of independent markets, breaking up big conglomerates that I love about the microbrewery and micro distillery movement in general. And I actually am in favor of large brands and individuals that help to spur that. I'd much rather have these things. The region I'm sitting in right now is actually being helped economically by both those things as it becomes an area for those to establish themselves. So I like it from that angle. So it makes and when you're looking for a leg up, those kinds of big brand associations for some regional distillery are going to be huge, right? They're going to be the kind of thing, the only things that help them sustain and fight sort of big alcohol. And when I say that, I just mean the big companies, the big bottlers, the big, the full industry chain. So I like it from that angle. It doesn't surprise me. I don't think it'll do a bit of difference. Now, of course, if some, Michael Jordan plows in, on the freeway into 10 cars, and there's an empty bottle of, Genie Bus tequila in the passenger side, that's going to be a bad look. But I think other than that, it's not going to bring anything negative or, for that matter, positive.
I guess that's kind of what I'm wondering is what you're saying. It must be said that the name of this stuff is Cincoro Tequila. So it isn't the Genie Bus Tequila. And I think it would be a whole different story if it was, if it had like Michael Jordan and Genie Bus's smiling faces on a bottle of tequila. That may be different, but this is just, it's branded completely outside of the NBA, any reference or any link to the NBA whatsoever. So maybe it doesn't matter. I just wouldn't be completely happy about it, I suppose, if I was the NBA. That's all I'm saying. And listen, I mean, Michael Jordan doesn't get involved in something to be local. They're clearly intending this to be an elite, top of the line, worldwide domination tequila. Otherwise, you wouldn't have Michael Jordan's name associated with it. So I think we're getting away a little bit from the microbrewery local stuff with this particular brand.
Well, not necessarily in terms of how, like, because they're not going to and like Steve, I've probably had a sip or two of tequila, but that's just because it doesn't, in the world of alcohol, it's not particularly my taste. But I can't believe it. So Mezcal or whatever, and probably whatever the corporate owner of Mezcal is, because I'm sure that's just a brand within a larger thing. This isn't like Mezcal and Jordan and the buses and whatever, like going and doing like a specialty product through a big thing. They're still probably have some kind of bottling and licensing agreement with somebody that's probably smaller than big alcohol, because it's cheaper it just makes more financial sense for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In this article, by the way, this is from Bleacher Report also from September 16th. The article is Michael Jordan Genie Bus among NBA owners launching new tequila. That's the name of the article. And the only name it gives is Cincoro Tequila. They have a CEO, some business guy who's running this thing, and it doesn't mention anything about what company if they're bottling themselves or what. No idea. All my point is that they're not selling this stuff to local bars in the LA area. This is, they have a much wider proposed reach on this. Otherwise, Genie Bus and Michael Jordan in particular would not be involved in something like that.
The thing to watch for, and this may be something over the next even couple of years, is at what point does this become like, the one that's served in owners' boxes and in the high-end bars and stadiums, and that'll be, like that, because that could be potentially what would come from this.
It's kind of like Dan Snyder putting Johnny Rockets in the FedEx Field, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great equation here.
Are there more than like 2 Johnny Rockets even left in the world?
The only one that I personally know of, because I'm in and out of there on a semi-regular basis, is in, Union Station in D.C., the major train station. And the one there, and then oddly enough, now the nearest mall to where I am in the Catskills had one, but I think that may be gone. So I knew of 2 I could physically walk in between upstate New York and D.C.
So not much.
No.
See, I'm looking at their Wikipedia page now, and this Wikipedia page is, the latest date in here is 2014, and 16. So, according to Wikipedia, it has 320 locations worldwide, with a revenue of $47.8 million, which doesn't seem like a lot for 320 locations.
No, God.
So, once again, we're missing something, here in this. And I don't know if Dan Snyder even owns Johnny Rockets anymore.
I think he doesn't, but we're both talking out of our blow.
Oh, here, yeah, I do know now. Okay, Red Zone Capital Management sold the company to Sun Capital Partners in 2013. So, yet another failed Dan Snyder business. We're going to have to do a story on the show about Dan Snyder's failed businesses one of these days.
Which I think, does he have any of those auxiliary ones left outside of all things Redskins property?
Not much. I mean, we did a segment in the early days of the Hogsty on all of Dan Snyder's extraneous businesses, and he's out of a lot of it. I mean, he started with a telemarketing company, and he got funded by Howard Milstein, I think, for the telemarketing company. Sold that, bought the Redskins, was involved with Paramount with Tom Cruise for a while. I think that's over with. He got kicked out of Six Flags. He owned Six Flags for a while and got forced out after there were massive problems there under his watch. And then Johnny Rockets he sold. So I'm not sure. I'm sure he has other investments, but I don't know if he has any other big name investments anymore. No.
And just out of the last 2 years, he got out of the local DC media business because he doesn't own 980 anymore.
Yeah, that was Red Zebra, and yeah, he sold 980. Yeah, so he's either raising a lot of cash or reducing. Maybe he's just trying to spend more time and energy on the Redskins.
Oh man,
would that be a good thing?
No. Yeah, I'm still sitting here thinking about that revenue number for 350 franchises. That's the same as about 10 Southeast locations of Steve's Precious Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, I mean, so they're selling like 2 burgers a week. Yeah. That's what that means.
It isn't very good, and I
oh, here's one he owns. No, and also the other one he owned Dick Clark Productions for a while and sold that. So that was another one that has come and gone, by the way. So I really can't think of anything that Dan Snyder is still involved in.
Well,
except the Redskins, which is the one thing we don't want him involved in.
So if you're rooting for, as am I, the long-term fiscal degradation of Daniel Snyder to the point where he is forced to sell, those are some pretty good decade-long trend lines.
Yeah, except that you and I could run the Redskins and make the same amount of money as Dan Snyder is. You could put a 10-year-old in charge of an NFL team, and he would make money, great wealth beyond all comprehension.
I know. See,
so it doesn't matter how bad an owner is. It's impossible to lose money as an NFL owner.
Well, I'm waiting for some loss of there to have to be where. Don't ruin my dream, Steve. We're down.
Literally, it's impossible.
We're down to threads. I'm just hoping for. Okay, the real thing is a scandal so bad from that long tail of involvement somewhere to sink him. That really is the only legitimate path.
That you could get like a Donald Sterling thing going. That would sink him. Yeah, but money, it's impossible. It's literally impossible. Even if you had nobody show up at the stadium, he would still make if you had 0 people and 0 tickets sold, he would still make a fortune.
A boy can dream.
If he didn't sell 1 jersey and didn't sell 1 ticket, he would make a fortune. Trust me.
Well, hopefully he becomes bad for the Shield. Maybe that's the other path. All right.
We got away from Tequilla
here. So we're gonna come to our last story. We'll go from Tequila to college football. Probably more connections than our entry into Tequila if you factor in pre-games and all the shenanigans of collegiate life, shall we call it, and say that HBO, I guess, and when I read this article the second time, I realized, this is hitting the airwaves soon. This isn't even something like, next season, but this season we will see a kind of another one of these docuseries that HBO has been the leader of, but certainly not the only place you can find these style, but definitely the innovator. So I like to call them the children of hard knocks. And so this one's similar, and it's going to be looking at 4 college football programs right in the middle of their season, I would guess. And they didn't release an air date yet, but they released who the 4 teams that will be chronicled are. Steve, you want to tell us who these collegiate football programs are?
Yeah, this is from Sports Business Daily. It's behind a paywall, but the name of the story is HBO confirms upcoming 4-team 24/7 college football docuseries. Unbelievably, you have Washington State, okay, fine. Arizona State, great, because that's, you got, what's his name, Tony Dungy, and he's the coach at Arizona State, and he's talkative. No, Herm Edwards is the coach at Arizona State. And then Florida, big name. And, of course, you have one more. Penn State. Now, there's a lot of Division I football teams. So there's a lot of very, very highly visible, very popular programs out there. You could go to, like, UCLA, make a fortune. Any team in the SEC, you go to, like, Georgia, people would watch it. No, you have to go to Penn State. And, of course, Penn State was involved in a little scandal a while ago. that the Penn State alums are out there still vehemently protecting and justifying their love of school, despite the fact that there was a systematic acceptance of rape of children that the university is responsible for, and to this day I refuse to root for Penn State because of it. Why on earth would HBO think it's okay to put Penn State on this show? I don't understand that one at all. That just seems to be inviting problems. You could literally, like I said, literally come up with 30 other teams that you would get the same ratings for. You could pick almost anybody, big name, and get the exact same ratings for this show. And I'll shut up. I think these are the type of shows that are ratings cash cows for very little production costs, and so it's not like you're bringing in it's not like Ballers where you have to pay The Rock a fortune for 10 episodes of Ballers, like HBO. This is, you have a contract with a school, the production costs are low, so income is high. But I don't understand the Penn State thing at all. Help me understand it.
I don't. This is lack of this isn't really defense. But when the first things that popped through my mind, because it was my eyeballs rested there first, and I was like, oh, okay. So there really are zero consequences. I mean, and for the Penn State alumni, at this point, just shut up. You've won. Take the W for God's sakes. Chill out. But. Yeah, I don't understand it. But here's where probably the rationale is. One, if you look at it, they're taking kind of a four corners approach to coverage of the United States, right? So you had you're getting, so Penn State ostensibly kind of does a double duty for kind of capturing the Northeast and a little bit entering into the Midwest. So, you just look at where these programs are paced, you can obviously see some version of geographical coverage for the country.
Northeast, Southwest.
Yeah. So, but, it's not like you could have picked Michigan probably even going a little bit further west and probably gotten, something similar. So
Ohio State, you could have picked Syracuse,
right.
Some other. Yeah.
So there's plenty of other, and that even are still sexy or whatever. Now, I mean, maybe they're planning on covering that. I mean, we don't know what the narrative is, and I do trust HBO artistically, and they do, so they obviously earn trust on a lot of those levels. So maybe there is going to be a deeper examination of that, even if it, so that could be interesting to see. But I was like, oh, cool. I like these type of shows. I understand why they're popular. They're springing up. It's got their Last Chance U is on, I think, either Netflix or Amazon Prime. All of the networks, all of the streamers have versions of these shows across all sports. Even they do UFC and title fight ones. They do something similar. So this is a very popular. It's super interesting. I like the storytelling vehicle. So I was like, oh, this is interesting from that level. And then clicked on link, and my eyes immediately went to Penn State on the page, and I just wow, that is a choice right there. That is a choice.
Yeah, I've said for years that I think, and I don't think I've said on this show, so I'll say it here. I think Penn State University engaged in a intentional and systematic cover-up of the rape of children on its campus for the purpose of protecting the football team and the athletic department. And I think the fans of Penn State University have done everything possible to ignore what actually happened. And I think in this case, the university itself, through the actions of the management and leadership of Penn State University, are responsible. This is not just a one-off thing where Sandusky did awful things in the shower, nobody knew about it. This was reported to leadership of Penn State University, and the university itself made a decision to cover it up in order to protect the football team. I think that's unexcusable. I think it's unforgivable. I think Penn State University's football program should have been given the death penalty. The death penalty, and never played again. I don't know how you could possibly recruit somebody to Penn State. I never would let my kid go to Penn State if he was a D1 college athlete for that. And the idea of putting him on this HBO show is abhorrent to me. And I may not watch it because of that. And I don't know. I can't forgive it ever. And Penn State fans will forgive it and they've been apologizing forever. I just think it's I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way about it. And it's a very curious decision by HBO to put I know why Penn State would want to do it. They want to promote their brand. I get that and show that they've moved on and this is over with and nobody cares anymore. And I get Penn State. I just don't know why the public is asked to accept that.
I find it puzzling as well. We'll see. I have to, this does not spur nor deter me from watching it either way, and I may not have watched it just because of time and energy, and that college football has been one of those things is I have to manage my sports involvement is one of those things that's kind of fallen by the wayside. So just from an interest level, I may have looked at it once just to see how it was. In fact, I may even be curious to see how they handle, what's the angle, and if it is just complete whitewash, just hey, this is another premier college football team that in America that we're going to profile, or if there is some part of the narrative that's going to look into these issues or at least struggle with them in some way. Actually, might pique my interest is to see how they handle it. But I wish that they had picked a different program. Yes, I do.
Yeah, and of course, some of these programs wouldn't want the cameras. That's probably part of it. Nick Saban would not want cameras around. Some guy as intense as that. So they might, but still, there's 100 and whatever Division I football teams. They could have found somebody else. My guess is that they will ignore the issue. That's my guess. Penn State University will not want to discuss it in any way. So my guess is that it does not become a part of the narrative in this show.
That would probably be my guess as well. But I will be interested to see. And that is, in fact, we will see. Because they have not released an air date, but it looks like it probably will debut, I would guess, sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
You would think. Yeah.
It's certainly not going to come out in January, February. That would make no point. So we will see how they handle it and where we go from there. But it should be interesting, at least. We will see. All right, I think that brings us to the end of our rundown, Steve, correct?
It does. Yeah, we're at the end. We ran over a little bit today, but that's okay.
All right. So, Steve, what should people in the Hogside Network know and be caring about?
Okay, so we're obviously in the heart of the season, so we've got the Hogside game preview show and game wrap-up show, which comes out on Monday mornings, although this week, obviously, it will be released on Tuesday because of Monday Night Football. Seasons of Discontent is out there. That's Rick Snyder's show, which covers all things Washington and sports, as he likes to say. There's plenty of written content. We are part of the Big Heads Media Network now, so check out all sorts of other podcasts on that network.
All right, and you can find me at ChrisLarry33 on Twitter, at JustBusinessPod, and obviously Steve and the rest of the Hogsty gang at the Hogsty on Twitter, where there's polls, arguments, conversations about everything Redskins, everything NFL, which would probably, as most seasons, turn into a commiserating peer group here by.
It already has. It already's happened. You kidding me? That happened week 1 this year. Usually we get out of September before that happens, but we didn't even make it to mid-September this year.
No, the gnashing of teeth has begun.
Yeah.
All right. So we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.